Welcome. This is Jay Early. I'm the creator of Self Therapy Journey, and this is a webinar on Self Therapy Journey, a web application that helps you work to explore and resolve psychological issues. This particular webinar is going to emphasize a demonstration of stage 5 of Self Therapy Journey, which is the stage where you develop a homework practice for evoking the healthy behavior in your life that you're working on. So let me give you a little background on me. I'm a psychologist. I've been practicing psychotherapy for about 40 years. And about 12 years ago, I discovered Internal Family Systems Therapy, IFS, which is a really powerful and easy to use, user-friendly form of psychotherapy that was developed by Richard Schwartz. And I learned IFS and got trained in it and started using it with my clients and found out that it was so powerful and so effective that I basically started doing that with all of my clients. And of course, what I do is informed by the rest of my 40 years of being a therapist, but still, IFS is that good. So in addition to using it with my clients, of course I used it to work on my own issues, and it was very helpful to me. And in addition to that, I started assisting with professional IFS trainings and offering consultation and supervision for therapists. And then I started teaching IFS to the general public as a form of self-therapy that you could do on yourself. And out of those classes came the book Self-Therapy, which is a manual for IFS, which has been very, very popular. And I've written a bunch of other books on IFS. And then over the last 4 years, I have been developing Self Therapy Journey, which is an online tool that uses IFS and also the pattern system, which is something I developed, as a way of helping you to be able to work on your psychological issues online. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. Oh, and by the way, the pattern system is a system for understanding personality that I've developed over many, many years, which integrates really nicely with IFS. The pattern system provides the content of understanding your psychological issues, and IFS provides the process for healing and transforming them. So, let me actually go to the home page. Let's see. No, that's not what I want. Well, that's where I want to go. So let's go back here. Get you to the right page that I want to show you. Here it is. Okay, so this is the home page for Self Therapy Journey. You can kind of glance over this. Kind of gives you a rough idea of what it's for, kind of things it can help you with. Here's a whole list of some of the psychological issues that it will help you with, and so on. But in the meantime, before we get any further, what I'd like to do is do a little guided meditation with you to get us started, to help get you into a different place for more of an internal, quiet, emotional, contemplative place for being here in this webinar today. So what I encourage you to do is get into a comfortable position for a guided meditation, probably sitting fairly upright. But if you prefer to lie down, you can do that, as long as you know that you don't tend to fall asleep when you do that for a guided meditation. This will just be a short one. Later on in the call, I'm going to be doing a little bit longer guided meditation. So, close your eyes, go inside, and just begin by noticing your breathing. Just be aware of the sensations. You might notice the rise and fall of your belly with each breath. Or you might notice the air passing in and out of your nostrils with each breath. You don't have to change your breathing, just pay attention to it as a way of getting you focused and grounded. And as you continue to pay attention to your breath, just allow that to take you deeper inside. And if you find your mind wandering off to something else, just gently bring it back to focusing on the sensations of your breath in the moment. And now notice if at this moment you have any thoughts that keep recurring, or any fears or desires you're in touch with, or any emotions that are coming up, or any body sensations that indicate that a part of you might be activated right now. That just means that there's some piece of your internal psychology that's up at the moment. For those of you who don't know IFS. So if you are aware of a part, just focus on that part for a moment. Focus on the feelings or the thoughts or the desires or whatever it is, and just say hello to that part. And ask it what it's feeling, or ask it what it's concerned about that made it come up right now. And just take a moment to listen to that part of you and hear about its feelings and concerns. And now let that part know that you're here to help whatever it's concerned about. That whatever things are triggering it, it doesn't have to deal with them alone. That you're here to help. See if that helps the part to relax a little. If it does relax, it may allow you to be even more fully in this grounded, deeper inner place that IFS calls the self. Or you may realize that you might have another part that's also activated at this time. If you do, take a moment to pay attention to that part just the way you did to the other part. And let that part know also that you're here, and see if that helps it to relax. And now if your parts have relaxed, or if you didn't have any parts activated to begin with, just take a moment or so to just enjoy that quiet, deep, centered, grounded place, which is a place that IFS calls the self. Okay, so gradually begin to bring yourself back from the place that you've been in. Gradually maybe moving around a little bit, beginning to open your eyes, coming back to the room that you're in. Okay. By the way, there should be, if you want to be able to see what I'm showing you on the screen more clearly, there should be a full screen button or something like that in the lower right corner that allows you to have it over the whole screen. So feel free to do that if you want. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Self-Therapy Journey. I imagine some of you already know about it and are already using it, and others of you may be new to it. So, well, this may be useful for both camps. So by using Self-Therapy Journey to work on yourself, you can gain insight, you can take charge of your inner work, you can do Self-Therapy Journey on your own time, at your convenience, in a way that's private if you want, and really allows you to take charge of your own inner work. It's more personal and more interactive than a self-help book. It allows you to learn about issues that you might not even be aware of by taking the quizzes, and you can also work on those issues or issues that you are aware of. It helps you to keep your work on track, used on your own or as an adjunct to therapy. You can use it to develop a complete psychological profile of yourself. And let me just scroll down here a little bit, and you will see that IFS is based on, as I mentioned, is based on the pattern system, which is a system for understanding personality that I developed, which I lovingly call a periodic table for psychology. Here's one of the charts from the pattern system, which shows the interpersonal dimension group. I won't go into this now because this call isn't primarily about the pattern system. There are some other webinars that do that, and then it's also based on internal family systems therapy, which I've been talking about. And there's a really cool interview done by, with me, done by Tammy Simon of Sounds True. So on the homepage you can click here to watch this rather long, but from what I hear, very, very interesting interview, in which I talk about IFS in a lot of detail. So that's that. Now, I want to go ahead and show you a little bit more about how to use Self-Therapy Journey. So, if you go to this page. Why is this taking so long? Oh, there it is, taking so long to come up. Okay, on this page you can choose a pattern to work on. A pattern is something like people-pleasing or controlling or perfectionism or overeating, something that indicates some sort of psychological issue that you have that you'd like to change. So in order to decide and there's 23 different patterns in Self-Therapy Journey right now. How do you decide what to work on? Well, you can take a quiz. That's one way. So you can click here. There's two different quizzes. There's one for interpersonal patterns and one for non-interpersonal patterns. And actually, there's a bunch of other quizzes as well that you can go to Quiz Central. There's a whole set of quizzes in here you can look at and choose from those if you like, or you can just look at the main two. Like if you click on the interpersonal patterns quiz, you can see here's a quiz and you answer all the questions, and then click here and you get your results, and you'll get a score for each of your interpersonal patterns, which will tell you how likely you are to have that pattern. And then you can click on these links and get a description of the pattern, and then click from there to actually go and work on it. So that's another way to go. And then if we go back here, there's also on this page a list of all the patterns in Self-Therapy Journey. You can click on that, and you can see here we have angry pattern, caretaking, conflict avoiding, controlling, defensive, dependent, depressed, etc., etc. All the different patterns you can work on. Or if you prefer to work on something you'd like to develop, there's a list of healthy capacities. The pattern system includes not only patterns, which are problematic ways of functioning and relating, but also healthy capacities, which are the healthy ways of functioning and relating, and that you want to develop to replace the patterns. So there's aliveness, assertiveness, being centered, the ability to challenge people, clarity, conscious consumption, cooperation, courage, ease, etc. So you can also choose a healthy capacity you'd like to develop. Or you can actually look at a list of common psychological issues, and that will take you, shows you what each pattern is that corresponds to that issue. Or you can actually browse through the pattern system itself, look at the different dimensions, and explore around and decide for yourself what patterns you have that you want to use. So there's all those different ways of doing that. Let me just go back here. I want to mention that there is a chat function that goes with this webinar, and I love to have people talk to me. So even though, unfortunately, we can't talk verbally out loud, we can talk through chat. So if you've got any comments or questions, or if you'd like to share anything, want me to share anything with the group, just type away into the chat, and it will come up here on this page, and I'll check this periodically, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. In fact, I love to do that, so I really encourage you to take advantage of that, and I'd love to answer your questions. But so far, there don't seem to be any questions here, so I will go on. So let's see. Let's go back here. So let's suppose now you've chosen a pattern. Let's just suppose you've chosen people-pleasing, because you tend to be a pleaser and you're not happy with that and you like to change it. So you will click here, and this is the first page where it gives you an introduction to the pattern. But you can see across the top that there are 5 main stages for working on every pattern, including the people-pleasing pattern. The first stage is where you explore the pattern itself. You explore how you tend to please people, what your behavior is, what your thoughts are, what your feelings are, when your people-pleaser tends to get triggered, the underlying motivations for people-pleasing, and then you actually can do a guided meditation to get to know your people-pleasing part using IFS. And then at the end of stage 1, you get a report that you can print out or just keep on your on a device that has all the information that you filled out so far about that pattern. Then in stage 2, you can explore the childhood origins behind your people-pleasing pattern. You're probably pleasing because there's a part of you that's trying to get love, or trying to avoid being abandoned or hurt or judged or attacked in some way. And each of those fears corresponds to an emotional wound, or what is called a wound in the pattern system. And that corresponds to a type of exile in IFS. So in stage 2, you can explore the different wounds that you have and do a lot of detailed exploring for each type of wound, and then you can also do for each type of wound a guided meditation for healing that exile using IFS. So that's stage 2. I'm not going to go into more details on these stages because this webinar is mainly focused on stage 5, but I wanted to give you an overview of how the whole thing works. So in stage 3, you get to explore the healthy capacity that replaces the pattern. So in the case of people-pleasing, the healthy capacity would be in assertiveness. If your pattern was procrastination, the healthy capacity would be work confidence. If your pattern was perfectionism, the healthy capacity would be ease, and so on. So in stage 3, you explore the healthy capacity, and you get to kind of delineate exactly what aspects of that capacity you develop. Then in stage 4, you begin to set up your homework practice. You choose a particular situation that's likely to come up soon in your life where your pattern tends to get triggered. In this case, a situation where you tend to become a pleaser. So maybe you have, maybe it happens when you're meeting with your boss. Maybe it happens when your husband gets angry at you, or maybe it happens all the time at work. Whatever it is, you can choose a particular type of situation that you either know is going to come up in the next week or two, or a kind of situation that you can't predict but you think is likely to come up in the next week or two. And that's what you're going to do your practice on in stage 5. And then in the rest of stage 4, you actually work through some of the fears that your people-pleasing part has that causes it to act out as a pleaser in the particular practice situation you've chosen. So you get to already sort of preliminarily kind of reassure your people-pleasing part that it doesn't really have to please people in this situation. So that's a kind of preparation. But then in stage 5, we're actually going to set up the homework practice. So let me go here. But before I do, let me just check to see if anybody has... Nope, nobody's typed in anything in the chat yet. Okay, so I will go on. Okay, so here's... so in stage 5, you can actually click here to begin stage 5. So now here is stage 5, and you can see on the left side, these are all the pages in stage 5. And I'm going to go through each one of them and show you how they work. So you've already chosen a practice situation. Oh, let me actually go back. I want to fill in a couple things here. Let me go back to stage 4 and show you. So here's, oh, I did this already. So here for the stage 4 practice situation that you filled in, the situation is a friend asked me to do something. Maybe that's the situation that tends to trigger your pleaser. And then in the next page, this is still stage 4, how do you behave? So I say yes without thinking. So that might be that. How would you like to behave? I want, whoops, what happened? How would you like to behave? Here we go. I want to consider whether I want to say yes or no. And then what are the fears? Let's say I'm afraid of being rejected. Okay, so that's filling in a few things there. Now let's go back to stage 5. And we'll now go down and start stage 5. Now, one of the things I've discovered is that doing a homework practice is one of the most difficult things for people to follow through on. Oh, wait a minute, hold on, there's one more thing I wanted to do. I want to go back to stage 3, actually. And as long as we're doing this, let's do it right. So I'm going to, one of the things that you do when you're exploring your healthy capacity is you choose a name for it. So let's say for my assertiveness part, I'm going to call it Mr. Stand-Up. So let's say that. And the reason I wanted to do that is when I get to stage 5, you will see, ooh, here it is, Mr. Stand-Up. So it showed up here, and I should have also given a name to, I might as well do that. Let me just show you. If I go back to stage 1 and click here, and then choose a name for my people-pleasing part. So let's say I call it the capitulator. Now when I go back to stage 5, now it's finally going to work the way I wanted it to, because I filled those things in. You will see here now that it says this step sequence helps you develop a practice for activating Mr. Stand-Up in your life instead of the capitulator in the practice situations you've chosen to work on. So that's a little cool little thing that this thing does. Now, it really helps to be inspired to do the practice, to remember why it is that you actually wanted to do this. So maybe your needs never get met. Maybe you feel like you've lost yourself in your relationship. Maybe other people's needs always come first. So maybe those are 3 of the reasons why you want to do this practice. So you fill that out. And then what are some of the things you stand to gain by being assertive? Personal power, self-confidence, and maybe you can also fill in your own. Maybe another one would be feeling good about myself. So I can fill that in. And now that's going to go on the list. So let's suppose I fill in those things, and you're going to see those. So those will help to remind me that this, why I actually want to do this practice, and help me to kind of follow through on it and really do it. So now let's look at the next one. Here the question is, how am I going to know in the practice situation when I'm actually being a pleaser? I mean, maybe it's obvious, but maybe it's not always obvious. What are some of the feelings, thoughts, or body sensations or behaviors that will clue me in that I'm being a pleaser? Well, obviously, urge to please, pleading feeling, maybe feeling intimidated, maybe feeling anxious to please, not thinking for myself. Maybe that's a big one. So maybe those are the clues that I will fill in that will let me know that my pleaser has been activated, or I could fill in my own. So now the next thing you're going to do is, in that situation, to reassure your pleaser, which I'm calling the capitulator, that it doesn't need to do that. So what are some of the things that you might want to say to reassure your pleasing part? It's okay if I speak up and express my mind. I don't have to think and feel like everybody else. I won't be attacked if I assert myself. I won't be, there's the big one. I won't be rejected. Because remember, that was the fear, or left if I stand up for myself. Or maybe this person will like me if I speak my mind. So whatever is true in this situation, you can check off some of these, or maybe there's a new one that's not, maybe there's a bunch of them. You can add a whole bunch of statements that are really very particular to your situation. Put them in here, and then they will show up along with these others in your practice plan. There are some challenges. Suppose you say no to this person, and they don't react well. So how are you going to handle that, or how are you going to handle making sure that doesn't happen? So here's some options for things you might want to do. I will choose maybe you want to choose the person first to try this with who's most likely to be receptive to your being assertive, to saying no. Or here's a whole bunch of other possibilities for how you're going to handle if someone tries to ignore me. I'll speak up. That's the assertiveness capacity. Maybe you're afraid of being judged. If I don't agree with the judgment of me, I will speak up strongly. So you can think through here, how are you going to handle it if there's a tough situation, and fill those in. So let's go on. Now, what else can you do? Now, what can you do to actually evoke assertiveness in the situation that's coming up? What are some things you can say to yourself? I have the right to decide what actions to take for my happiness. For this situation, it might be, I have the right to say no if that feels appropriate. So I'll put that in. Notice it went right on the list here. And then maybe you also want to practice certain body sensations, body postures, breathing, feelings, or states of consciousness to help you be assertive. So maybe a straight spine, maybe deep breathing, maybe if you're standing up, maybe stepping forward assertively, making eye contact with the person you're talking to, maybe being grounded. So I'll check off a few of those. And then maybe you want to practice this. Maybe you want to practice this with somebody who might be actually willing to help you. In this case, probably not. If you're saying no, you can't know exactly who that's going to be ahead of time. So I'll skip that. So let's go on. Now, the next thing that's very interesting. Oh, actually, before I go on, let me just stop here and go back and check. Nope, no questions on the chat. Okay, we'll continue. Okay, so now on this page, is designed to help you develop your inner champion. Your inner champion is a part of you, a healthy part of you, that supports you in feeling good about yourself and being yourself. And you can actually have, it's kind of like, you can think of it as a cheerleader or maybe as an ideal supportive parent. And what you can do is develop an inner champion for each capacity. So in this case, you're going to develop your assertiveness inner champion. And you can do a guided meditation for developing that, and I'm actually going to lead you through that later, but let's go on here. So your assertiveness inner champion, let's name for it. Maybe you're going to call it Strength Booster. And then we'll go on, and now you can also choose an image for what your assertiveness champion, inner champion looks like a father figure to support me. Maybe I'll click that one. But if none of these feel right, you can also find something in Google Images, download it to your computer, and then upload it to here and put it in here. Or if you just have an image, an internal image of your assertiveness inner champion, you can type in a description of it here. So let's go to the next page. And now, think about, now in this case, I'm doing people-pleasing and assertiveness. But you might, and so let me do this first. So what you're going to do here is think about, what would you like to hear your assertiveness inner champion say to you to support you in being assertive? You have the right to get what you want. You can say no whenever you want. You have the right to stand up for yourself, and so on. So let's say we pick those three. But what I'd like you to do right now, because we're going to do a little guided meditation, what I'd like you to do is think about, if you're working on self-therapy journey, what pattern would you like to work on? Maybe you already know, but if you haven't, choose a pattern just for your own, in your own mind. Choose a pattern that you'd like to work on in self-therapy journey. And then, along with that, more importantly, choose a capacity. And you don't have to know all the patterns and capacities. Just come up with something that fits for you. It doesn't have to be one of the official patterns or capacities in the pattern system. What healthy capacity would you like to develop? So take a moment to think about the healthy capacity that you would like to develop in a practice situation, in a homework practice. And then what happens is you're going to click to this page, and you're actually going to be able to listen to a guided meditation that will help you develop that inner champion for that capacity. So what I'm going to do right now is a little change of pace, is we're going to switch from my showing you this to actually, I'm going to do a little guided meditation with you to help you access and find your own inner champion for whatever healthy capacity you'd like to develop. So let's go back and do another guided meditation. So again, get into a comfortable position, probably with your spine fairly straight for a guided meditation. Close your eyes, go inside, and focus your attention on your belly. Just notice the sensations in your belly in this moment. Maybe you notice your belly feels full, or maybe it feels soft, or maybe it feels solid. Maybe you just notice the rise and fall of your belly with each breath. Or maybe something else altogether. Whatever it is, just focus your attention on the sensations in your belly. That will help to bring you into a centered, grounded place. And now we're going to take a little trip back in time in your life. Look back over your life for moments when you felt seen, appreciated, or acknowledged. Just let a memory emerge of one of those times when you felt that way. When someone was there who recognized you, encouraged you, or supported you. Maybe a wise person who stood up for you or guided you, or just let you know that they saw you. This person may have been a teacher, a coach, a parent, a neighbor, a friend, some other relative, whoever it might be. Just let yourself really be there back at that time, remembering what that felt like. What did that person say to you? How did that make you feel? And allow yourself to use an image or the sense of that person to help you develop your inner champion. And now you also maybe some other memories will come up of other times when you were also supported and championed by someone. This comes up, take a moment with that memory. And then also bring an image of that person in as another support for your inner champion, as another guidepost for your inner champion. Now maybe you don't have memories like that. So, or maybe you would like to also base your inner champion on some other things. So you can also think of people you admire people, famous people who you know about, who have been kind and supportive or visionary or powerful, people like Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or Oprah or Gloria Steinem, Michael Jordan, whoever it is. Think of some famous person maybe who could be part of the makings of your inner champion. Or it could also be a fictional person. Maybe if you're old enough, maybe the father in Father Knows Best. Or maybe Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings. Or maybe a mythical figure like Athena or Mercury. Choose from any of these famous or fictional or mythical figures to help all be part of creating an inner champion, an inner champion for you for the particular capacity that you would like to develop. So now let yourself envision or sense that inner champion that's specific to this healthy capacity that you would like to develop. Let yourself see that champion or feel them or sense them being there to guide you, to support you, and to encourage you. And then think about some of the things that you'd like to hear from your inner champion to help you with your particular capacity. Statements like, you have the right to, or you deserve to, or you're capable of XYZ, or whatever it might be. Supportive statements that tell you that you have the right to exercise that capacity in your life and that you can do it. Just hear that person saying those statements to you. And hear that inner champion supporting you in that way. And then notice how that makes you feel inside to get that kind of support. Okay, so remember what this inner champion looks like and sounds like. And as we come out of this guided meditation, you might even want to write down some notes about your inner champion, and specifically, especially the statements that your inner champion was saying to you that you wanted to hear. By the way, these don't have to be statements that you're already saying to yourself or you're already hearing inside. These especially should be statements that you want to hear, even if you haven't been hearing them inside, because this is developing this new healthy part of you that will support you. Okay, so now gradually bring yourself back from the guided meditation. Again, beginning to move around a little, to open your eyes, bringing yourself back to the room that you're in and back to the computer screen. Okay. One of the things that I want to say is that this inner champion stuff can be helpful on its own, but it's really most effective if you've already done some of the early stages, if you already worked through some of the, explored the pattern that you want to change and work through some of the wounds behind it and did some reassuring of the protector that enacts that pattern and so on. So the more preliminary stuff you do, the more successful you will be at accessing and using your inner champion in your life in the practice situation. That's what stage 5 is intended to do, is not just create your inner champion, but then have it so you can actually use that part to help you, along with all the other things that you're setting up, use it to help you activate the healthy capacity in the situation. In my example, it was assertiveness. With you, it might be something else. Okay, so now I see that somebody has a question on the chat. Hello, what should I do if these things make me feel scared? I feel kind of scared now just hearing it. Well, that's not surprising. A particular pattern, or if you're working on developing a healthy capacity, that might scare a part of you. So in self-therapy journey, you can, in stage 1, you actually get to work on the part of you that is acting out the pattern because of these things it's afraid of. And so in stage 1, you can get to know the part and find out what it's actually afraid of. And then in stage 2, you can actually work, it's probably afraid because there are some exiles that have unresolved issues from childhood. So in stage 2, you can actually work on resolving those issues. And then the other thing you can do about fears is in stage 4, you can actually reassure your part that it doesn't have to be scared. As long as you've thought it through and you realize, often what this person says that was referring to the assertiveness statements. Okay, so you were scared. Yeah, so that often happens. There's probably a part of you that's scared to be assertive. And so in stage 4, so the first thing to ask, the first thing I want to say is that often the fears that we have are not really based on what's likely to happen in the present if you're assertive. They're more likely to be fears that go back to childhood. And so if you know what your fears are, and you can do that by doing stages 1 and 2, you can think about it, and you can probably realize that most of these fears aren't likely to happen in the practice situation you've chosen for being assertive in your current life. So in stage 4, you can actually do a guided meditation where you go in and reassure your people-pleasing part, in this case, that its fears aren't realistic in this practice situation in your current life, because you're not a child anymore, you're not under your parents' control, you have your own supports in your own life, you have your own inner resources, and you have your own friends and people to support you, and so the fears probably won't happen. Or if one of those fears would happen, like maybe you're afraid that somebody will be a little bit rejecting if you say no. Well, if you do have a friend who might be that way, you can then figure out, well, what am I going to do? If I say no and this person seems a little put off by it, how will I deal with that? Well, maybe I'll ask them what's going on and ask them, talk to them about it, and, I won't go into all the details, but you can figure out how to handle it so that you can reassure your part that it doesn't have to be scared. But that's best done after you do stages 1 and 2, where you actually already have worked through some of the deeper issues underneath your fears. Okay, so anyway, so that finishes the guided meditation for your inner champion, but we're not finished with stage 5 yet. So we're still, I'm going to close this page, which now brings us back to the third of the inner champion pages you can see over here. Now I do next, and now what I get is my practice plan. And so this shows you, this basically pulls together all the things that you put in before. Ooh, it doesn't have my practice situation in here. That's a bug. Oh my goodness. It should say the practice situation right there that I filled in earlier. Maybe I have to go back and fill that in again. Maybe it's been that was like a whole nother session when I did that. Let me go back here to, whoops, I want stage 4. Let's see if this actually works. I'm just going to make sure that this gets filled in. Okay, let's go. Now let's go back and see if it actually shows up in stage 5 where it should be. So I go down to here, go into stage 5, go to my practice plan. No, it's still not showing up. All right, got a bug here. So this report then contains the other things I see. Here's the things I filled out, including stuff that I typed in myself, like feeling good about myself. Here's how I usually be. Here's how I like to behave. Here's some of the, anyway, I don't have to go over this here. So this basically pulls in all the things that I filled out. An image, a name for the assert, etc., etc. So this is now my practice plan report, and I can print this out, or I can just leave it on in Self-Therapy Journey, and I can have it available on a tablet or even a smartphone. So it's right there when the practice situation comes up. So if I know, for example, that that I'm in a situation where, or a situation is about to come up where somebody is probably going to ask me for something, I can pull out this stuff and go over it and remind myself what I'm going to do. Or if I don't know ahead of time and I'm in a situation where somebody, since my practice situation is a person asked me to do something for them, maybe I don't know ahead of time when that's going to happen, but maybe I can decide that if it does happen, instead of saying yes or no, I'm going to say, let me think about it. And then afterwards, I'm going to go back in, I'm going to look at my practice plan, I'm going to go over all the things here, and then I'm going to go back to the person, call them back, or go back into the other room and talk to them. And now, of course, I won't necessarily say no, because being assertive doesn't always mean saying no. Maybe they're asking me to do something that feels right to do, so I'm going to say yes. But if I do decide to say no, then I've got all this preparation, all this setup for helping me to be assertive, or even helping me to say, I need to think about it. Maybe that's the main thing I need to do to be assertive. Not to say no, I need to say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. So maybe I need to do all this in order to prepare me to be able to say that, and then to be able to say no if that's right. And this is all to help me actually do that. And then, so anyway, I've already been talking about how to do that. Now, it's also really a good idea when you're doing your stage 5 practice, especially, it's actually a good idea to have for most people, not for everybody. Some people like to do it on their own, and that's just fine. But many people do better if they have a buddy or a witness in going through Self-Therapy Journey. This could be somebody who's actually there with you in person or on the application, or they could be just somebody you talk to afterwards. But it's particularly useful for most people to have a buddy when they're doing the homework practice, because you can talk to your buddy, you can tell them, here's my practice situation, here's where it's likely to come up in the next week or two, and you can even make plans to talk to your buddy after your practice situation has happened and to tell them what happened, and did you remember, and were you able to be assertive, and what happens, and if it didn't go too well, what do you want to do next so it happens better, and so on. So that's something I recommend. So that, by the way, that completes stage 5. Here's a little interlude page where you can fill out some things about your practice. And maybe it's best to show you, just to finish it off, there's actually just a few pages after stage 5. One of them, you go over patterns that are related to your people-pleasing pattern. You can think more about patterns that might be in conflict with it. If you have both people-pleasing and controlling or rebel, there might be an inner conflict. Or here you can go to a page on the power dimension in the pattern system to learn more about the people-pleasing pattern and related patterns. There's another page that has additional help for your pattern, and then there's finally a conclusion page for that particular pattern. But then, of course, you can go back and work on other patterns as well. However, there's more. When you're actually doing your practice, you'd like to be able to track it. And so here is your dashboard. The dashboard is the main page for people who are already enrolled in Self-Therapy Journey and are using it. This has your status for all your different patterns and how to restart, and here's how to start a new pattern. Here are lists that you may have checked off of patterns, capacity, wounds, or meditations you want to explore in the future. Here's your practice pages. Here's links to your reports and your quizzes. So everything is right here. Okay, but here, what I want to show you for the moment is your practice pages. So let's scroll down to people pleasing. And here you can click here to see your practice plan for people pleasing. So this is something that you can access later when you come back to Self-Therapy Journey, you know, in the middle of your week when you're practicing. You can look at your practice plan here, and then there are 3 tracking pages for tracking your practice. There's an incident tracking page. So each time you do the practice, you can go to this incident page. I'll click on it, and you fill out what time it is and click here to continue, and then here you click in what the incident was, what triggered your people-pleasing pattern, what statements you said to remind it, and so on. All the different things you can fill out. What happened, were you able to be assertive, how did the other person respond further, etc. So there's a whole page on that particular incident. So I'll close this. And now, here we go. There's also a daily. So at the end of the day, here you can click on the day. Whoops, sorry about that. I should have turned my phone off. At the end of the day, you can reflect back on the day because maybe the practice situation happened once or twice that day. Did you remember to do anything? You know, you might not have filled in the incident page. How many incidents happened? Were you paying attention? You know, what happened? Is there anything that you want to do better? And so on. So this is a kind of reflecting on the day. You can close that. And then there's also, here it is, page for reflecting on the whole week. And here's the date on the week. You can go there. And how many times did you practice this week? Was it enough to be helpful? Blah, blah, blah. And you can strategize for next week. Is there any way you want to do this practice differently? And so on. So that's a way of tracking and improving your practice so that you really stay with it. So this is very helpful. And this is also, if you have a buddy, you can send these pages to them so that they can look at these pages too, and so on. Okay, so let me go back here. Okay, nobody else has any questions. So that's basically what I wanted to show you in Self-Therapy Journey. So let me just stop here, and now that you've seen everything I wanted to show you, I mean, there's obviously a lot more to Self-Therapy Journey than this, but this is the main thing I wanted to show you today. So if you've got any other questions, feel free to fill them out. And by the way, since many of you will probably be watching a recording of this teleseminar, you're not going to be able to fill out questions in the chat, but you can email me questions, and I'll be happy to answer your emailed questions. Here's another question. Is it better to work on one pattern at a time, or can one work on more than one concurrently? Well, that's a very interesting question. It depends. It's basically good to stick with one pattern and follow it all the way through unless you realize of working on one pattern, that in order to really resolve that pattern, you're going to have to work on some other ones as well. So for example, let's suppose you're working on people pleasing, and you realize that that your people pleasing pattern is really triggered because you feel depressed and hopeless, and that kind of triggers you to become a pleaser. And so you kind of realize that you're really going to have to work on your depressed pattern in order to change your people pleaser. Or it could be something else. Maybe you realize you're being a pleaser in order to take care of people. So maybe you need to work on your caretaking pattern. I call those colluding patterns, because they collude with the pattern you're working on. And so if you discover that you have a colluding pattern, or it also, maybe you have a polarized pattern, some pattern that's in conflict with your people-pleasing pattern. So maybe that would be, you have to work on that pattern. So you may discover that there are other patterns you need to work on in order to completely resolve people-pleasing. But even then, it's probably a good idea to go through most of the way through people-pleasing and finish that up. And maybe you'll have to work on the other patterns before you do your practice, or maybe you'll start your practice and then realize you have to do the other patterns. It varies. But it's probably better not to be in the middle of too many patterns at once. Because I've had people tell me that they get confused, and they get kind of lost and overwhelmed if they take on too many things at once. So my guess is, unless you've got, and of course the good thing about Self-Therapy Journey is that it helps you track everything that you're doing. So if you are in the middle of 3 different patterns, you'll have a restore point, a restart point for each pattern. So you can go back in and restart where you left off. So it is possible, and Self-Therapy Journey helps you to track all that. But even so, I've had people tell me that they get overwhelmed and confused by going off in too many directions at once. So unless you're clear and you don't feel overwhelmed by it, it's probably better to stay with one pattern. Okay. Anyway, those of you who are watching this on a replay, feel free to email me any questions you have, answer them. And in fact, let me just say even more than that. Let me just come back here and let you, hi, I'm back here again. I've been here all along, but now you can see me. I really want to make myself available to all users of Self-Therapy Journey. So in fact, I'm inviting everybody to give me your phone number or your Skype name, and I will call you and we can talk, and I'll introduce myself and help you in any way that I can, answer any questions, let you know how I can support you. And then also, as you're using it, anytime you run into any difficulties or need help or get stuck, feel free to call me or email me, and I'll be happy to help you. I also, provide, more extensive coaching for people who are using Self-Therapy Journey. I mean, so if you need extensive help, then that would more fall under coaching, and I would charge for it. But any sort of short help is free, because I really just want to be there to support you, so you know that you're not doing this alone, that I'm here to back you up and help you in any way that you can. As well as, of course, if you have your own therapist or if you have a buddy or witness, they'll also help you. So you can have as much help as you want, or as little. If you prefer to work on it, do it entirely on your own, without me or any other help, feel free to do that too. It's designed for any of those things. So, oh, I know what else I wanted to do. So let me show you. The other thing I wanted to do is show you here. So if you're interested in exploring Self-Therapy Journey and finding out a lot more about it, there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of videos of me explaining various aspects of it. Feel free to look around to check out all the different patterns you can work on. There's a lot there. So just click on that link, and that will take you to the homepage for Self Therapy Journey, and feel free to look around to your heart's content. Oh, I know. The other thing I want to tell you about is that if you, for stage 2, which is where you work on your the underlying childhood origins of your patterns, that is deep work on painful childhood issues. And for a very small number of people, it can trigger trauma or major pain or really major defenses. So it's appropriate for almost everybody, but not for everybody. There are some people that it's not appropriate to do stage 2. And so for everybody, in order to do stage 2, you need to be okayed by a therapist or counselor. So if you have a current therapist or counselor, or if you've worked with somebody in the recent past, then they can vouch for you that it would be fine for you to work on childhood issues on your own. Then you can talk to them. There's a page where you can send them to where they can get an access code to give you access to stage 2. If you don't have a current or recent therapist or counselor who could vouch for you, then the other thing you can do is you can get evaluated by a therapist or counselor who knows self-therapy journey. They can check you out, talk to you, evaluate you, and give you permission to access stage 2 if that's appropriate. I do that for lots of people. If you're interested in having me evaluate you, you can contact me, and I'll send you a questionnaire and then talk to you on the phone. And for most people, I don't have to talk to them for more than a half hour to realize that it's okay for them. Or if I'm not totally clear, then for some people I'll say, go ahead and try it, but I'm here. Check with me the first time you do stage 2, and I'm here to help and support you if you run into any sort of trouble. So that occasionally happens. So feel free to contact me. So it doesn't have, I'm trying to make Self-Therapy Journey as affordable as possible. So even though this evaluation does, if you don't have your own therapist, needs to cost, of course, if you already have a therapist, it shouldn't cost anything. You can just ask them to do it. It doesn't cost them anything. If you need to talk to me or one of the other therapist guides for Self-Therapy Journey, then it'll cost something, but of course, everybody does it their own way, but I only charge people for however much time it actually takes for me to evaluate them, which could be as little as a half hour, for which I would charge just $70, which is even less than half of my hourly therapy fee. So feel free to do that with me, or there's also a list of other people who volunteered to be therapist guides for Self-Therapy Journey. Feel free to look over that list. Maybe somebody on that list is closer to your area or has more of an expertise in the issues you want to work on, so feel free to look at that list. You can find these all on the home. Maybe I should show you on the home page. Let's go back to the home page here. So if we go back to the Self-Therapy Journey homepage, and here's the page for finding a therapist guide. This explains how it works. Here's a list of the current therapist guides, and you can click on each of these and read about them, see what state they're in, blah, blah, blah. So you can find a therapist guide to help you that way. Okay, so let's see. What else did I want to say? See if there's any other... Oh, I know. The other thing I wanted to... Well, let me just go back and check the chat. No other chat. Okay, let's go back to the pop-ins. Okay, so I'm going to remove that offer, and now the other thing I want to show you is the other thing you can do with Self Therapy Journey is you can try it out for free for 14 days without any charge. So in addition to looking around, you can actually click here and it takes you right to the page where you can sign up for that 14-day free trial. So if you want to actually, and you can try it out, and I recommend if you try it out, certainly look around, do a lot of looking around, but then actually choose a pattern that you want to work on and work it. So you're actually using Self Therapy Journey. Do at least a couple of Self Therapy Journey sessions for an hour and a half at a time and work on your pattern. You probably won't be able to finish your pattern in a couple sessions because after all, you've got 5 stages to work on, and probably each stage may take you a whole session. But if you do at least a couple sessions or maybe 3 sessions in your 14 days, that will give you enough of a sense of whether you want to sign up for Self Therapy Journey. And if you do, by the way, Self Therapy Journey only costs $25 a month. You can that is a fraction of what a single therapy session costs. And this is for a whole month of Self Therapy Journey. So you can see I've really wanted to make this really affordable so that people can get the psychological help they need without having to pay a lot of money and having it right at their fingertips. And then you can also, if it turns out as you're using it that you realize that you need more help, then you can find yourself an IFS therapist or just get some guidance from me or from one of the other therapist guides and just use us as much as you need to, as little as you need to, and do most of the work yourself. Or if you discover that you really, and some people discover that they really prefer to be working with a therapist as they go through Self Therapy Journey and doing whole sessions with an IFS therapist in conjunction. That's fine too. Do it however you want. There's lots of different ways to do it. Okay, so let's go back now. Hi again, and see if let me now see if there's any other questions in the chat. No. Okay, last chance. If you've got any other questions, I'll give you another 30 seconds to type in any last questions, or those of you who are. But of course, feel free to send me questions by email later on. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to talk with you on the phone or by Skype, however you want to do it. Okay, nobody's sending any other questions through, so I guess we are finished for today. So thanks for joining me, and goodbye for now.